Welcome to a realm where compassion and effective communication thrive, allowing us to delve into the fundamental components of strong and affectionate relationships. Dominic sat attentively while his young son exuberantly explored their new residence. The living room had been transformed into an imaginary cityscape, a collection of cardboard structures born from his son's vivid creativity. "Dad, there's so much space to play," exclaimed Max energetically. "Do you like our new home?" Dominic inquired with a twinkle in his eyes. "I love it. Mom would love it too, right? She can see our new haven, can't she?" Max's innocent eyes shone with curiosity and emotion. Dominic approached his son, kneeling to meet his eye level. He gazed into Max's eyes, brimming with affection and nostalgia, enfolding him in a warm, secure embrace. "Absolutely, Max. She can and she does," Dominic assured Max. It had been 2 years since Dominic's wife and Max's mother had tragically passed away. Despite being only 3 years old at the time, Max retained memories of his mother, a result of Dominic's dedicated efforts to preserve her memory by placing her family photograph in every room of the house. Max's curiosity about his mother often emerged. One day, as they read a bedtime story, he asked Dominic about his mother's interests. "Did Mom like to read?" Max inquired. The question resurrected fond memories of Dominic and his wife engrossed in discussions about their literary pursuits. A wistful smile spread across Dominic's face. "Your mother was a true book enthusiast, Max. She enjoyed sharing tales from the books she read. She would have been overjoyed to witness you learn to read even before starting school." Motivated, Max picked up a book and cautiously traced the letters with his small fingers. Dominic employed this approach of question and answer to educate his son, allowing him to feel his wife Skylar's presence, nurturing their son's development. Suddenly, Max asked, "Dad, is Grandma returning to live with us?" "Absolutely, buddy, but first we need to unpack, organize everything, and set up a room for her. Afterward, we can head to the station to pick her up. Would you like to see the trains there?" Max's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Definitely, Dad. Car rides are so dull. I wish I could have gone with Grandma," Max said sincerely. Dominic chuckled heartily. "Well, I needed your help. Who else would have assisted me in moving all these heavy boxes?" Max pondered for a brief moment before responding. "All right, Dad, I'll take the train next time," he declared. Dominic readily agreed and pledged numerous train rides for Max in the days ahead. "Ready to start unpacking?" Dominic inquired. Max nodded with enthusiasm and got to work. He began by tackling the largest box, attempting to pry it open. Despite his determined efforts, the unyielding box remained sealed, causing him to stumble backward and land on his backside. Dominic held his breath, half expecting tears, but was relieved when Max responded with giggles instead. Over the next couple of hours, the father and son diligently unpacked and organized their new abode. Eventually, exhaustion set in. Max requested a snack and then promptly dozed off, one leg dangling off the sofa. With gentle care, Dominic covered his son with a blanket and resumed his unpacking task, mindful not to create any disturbances that might disturb Max's tranquil sleep. As he continued to empty the remaining boxes, he stumbled upon his late wife's collection of books. He gingerly opened a few, relishing the familiar aroma of the pages, a silent testament to his wife's tender touch. While neatly arranging the books on a shelf, a photograph slipped from the pages. The image depicted Skylar, his wife, in an unfamiliar version. She sported attire he couldn't recall ever seeing her in, and her hair was surprisingly cropped short, an entirely new look for him. He speculated that the photo might date back to her youth, yet she appeared to be the same age as when they had their son. The enigma perplexed him as he whispered to the photograph and tucked it away. Dominic resumed arranging the remaining books on the shelf. "Grandma, this is your room," Max proclaimed proudly as he showed Arya her new space. Arya's sigh, now in the apartment, turned her attention to her son. Her eyes held a tinge of sadness as she let out a deep sigh. "This is a beautiful apartment, Dominic. I hope we can finally establish ourselves here." Dominic's thoughts were absorbed, his gaze distant. Without meeting her eyes, he softly replied, "I hope so too, Mom. That's what they assured us." As a military officer by profession, Dominic's recent promotion had led them to this city. The higher-ups, understanding his personal circumstances, had guaranteed his assignment here until his contract's end. Yet, the end of that contract loomed, accompanied by a complex array of emotions. Dominic's cherished wife, Skylar, used to accompany him everywhere, until an illness rendered her homebound under his mother's care as Dominic continued his assignments. Tragedy struck when he least expected it. Instead of the recovery they had all hoped for, Skylar passed away. The memory of that heart-wrenching day was now forever etched in Dominic's mind. He rushed home from another journey, his heart heavy with concern for his mother's health, longing for his family, and eager to engage in play with his son and embrace his ailing wife. Skylar awaited him, but her condition had significantly worsened. In the past, she would have greeted him with her captivating smile and a gentle, sweet fragrance, always dressed in something special for his return. However, this time the scene was starkly different. Dominic entered the house in hushed silence, setting his luggage down and removing his coat. The usual vivacious energy that filled their home was absent, replaced by an unsettling feeling of inevitability that weighed heavily on his heart. Summoning his inner strength, Dominic confronted the negative thoughts swirling within him. He entered the bedroom to find Skylar sleeping, and his heart panged with sorrow. Gazing upon his wife's serene visage, he quietly settled on the edge of the bed, his yearning to nestle beside her and offer solace palpable. With a tender touch, he gently placed his hand over hers, and as if responding to his touch, Skylar's eyes slowly fluttered open, revealing a faint smile. "Hey, my love. How have you been? I've missed you so much," Dominic whispered, his voice quivering with emotion. Her smile lingered, gradually warming. "I've missed you too, my darling," she replied, yet a momentary flicker of fear clouded her expression. "I was afraid. Afraid I wouldn't hold on until you returned." The brilliance of her smile returned, dispelling the shadow of fear. "But you're here now." She drew in a deep breath, her smile persisting. She gazed at Dominic, a silent but profound exchange passing between them. Then, her eyes gently closed, and her once radiant smile faded into a serene expression. Dominic remained by Skylar's side, believing she had slipped into much-needed slumber. However, a sudden wave of apprehension washed over him. "Skylar, my love," he murmured, gently shaking her, only to see her head fall lifelessly back onto the bed. A horrified scream escaped his lips, echoing in the background, unheard by his own ears. His mother reached out, holding him back, preventing him from chasing after the stretcher. "Dominic, please. It's over. She's gone. I'm sorry. You must be strong for Max," she implored. Max, blissfully unaware of the unfolding tragedy, remained in another room, engrossed in his cartoons. Amidst his anguish, Dominic's mind seemed to fog over. The paramedics arrived, but their presence only confirmed his worst fears as they covered Skylar's form and transported her onto a gurney. As he attempted to revive her with desperation and CPR, he caressed Skylar's cheek, entreating her to awaken. The paramedics worked diligently, but the outcome was inevitable. A shroud of numbness enveloped Dominic, his anguished cries echoing in the background, his own senses dulled by grief. The laughter from the cartoons served as the sole glimmer of positivity in that somber moment. Simultaneously, one of the most significant individuals in his life had silently departed from his world. As a young child, Max remained oblivious to the event transpiring just a few feet away from him. Years would pass before he matured enough to grasp the weightiness of that day. In his innocence, Max believed that his mother had embarked on a journey to a distant land to bring him the loveliest flowers and toys, leaving them behind. The week after the funeral, Arya approached Dominic with a sensitive topic. "You need a change of scenery, son. This house carries too much sorrow for you right now. Don't worry about Max and me. We'll manage. He's a resilient young man who lends a hand. With him starting kindergarten, I'll have ample time to take care of things." Her smile offered reassurance. Dominic didn't immediately respond to his mother's suggestion. He required time to contemplate over the ensuing days. He took Max fishing, a simple excursion that became a comedy of errors as he grappled with finding Max's gear, Gavinet, hat, and socks. The struggle served as a humbling reminder of how much Skylar had taken care of at home, an aspect he hadn't truly comprehended until now. As they finally set out on their excursion, Max unleashed a barrage of questions. Some were straightforward, others whimsical, and a few rather thought-provoking. Dominic had to carefully consider his responses or resort to online research. Approaching the lake, Max queried, "Dad, why don't fish drown?" Dominic chuckled at his son's inquiry, a question he himself had never pondered. He managed to construct a satisfactory answer for Max, hoping it would satiate his curiosity, but Max's inquisitiveness persisted. In the midst of this, Dominic contemplated how the task of raising and guiding Max had primarily been Skylar's responsibility. This newfound understanding magnified his respect for the immense role mothers play. In that moment, a sense of tranquility washed over him. Remembering Skylar became a source of solace, his gratitude for all she had done to nurture their son while he was away growing stronger. Though her absence left a gaping void in their lives, the memory of her drew him closer to her spirit. Later that evening, after a satisfying meal of their freshly caught fish, Dominic disclosed his decision to his mother. He had resolved to accept a posting to Afghanistan. His time there extended for a year that, despite its challenges, brought about positive growth and healing. Engrossed in the rigors of his mission, Dominic's mind was consumed, preventing it from dwelling excessively on the profound loss he had endured. Upon his return, he emerged as a decorated soldier, his courage acknowledged through a medal and a generous financial reward. This marked the initiation of the gradual decline in his constant military journeys. He felt prepared to establish a stable life, prioritizing Max's education, recognizing the significance of his own presence in that process. However, he desired a change of location from their current city, which brimmed with memories of Skylar. Their new apartment, once a chaotic sea of boxes, now stood as a testament to their collective effort. Everything was meticulously arranged, and Dominic was satisfied with its appearance. Seated together on the couches, sipping orange juice, he and Max reveled in the sense of accomplishment. Upon Arya's entrance into the apartment, she couldn't help but chuckle at their beaming faces, shaking her head in a familiar, "You too" manner. Possessing her own vision for the space, she urged them to roll up their sleeves and get to work. By evening, the apartment had undergone a complete transformation, emanating a cozy and inviting ambience. Surprised, Dominic remarked, "Wow, I have no idea what we did differently." Arya laughed and replied, "It's simple, son. It's because you're a man." Surveying the space, she inquired, "Where's our most dedicated helper?" Despite a search throughout the apartment, Max remained elusive. They even checked the door, only to find it locked from the inside, negating the possibility of him wandering off. Just as Arya was about to resort to her anti-anxiety medication, Dominic's voice echoed from the bedroom, providing insight into Max's whereabouts. As it turned out, Max had once again fallen asleep on the job. He had nestled himself into a large duffel bag, zipped it up, and dozed off. Arya breathed a sigh of relief. "Dominic, can you put him to bed?" "I'll start preparing dinner," she instructed. With a theatrical gesture, Dominic picked up the duffel bag and tossed it onto the bed. Arya shot him a stern look, to which he responded with laughter. Gently extracting Max from the bag, Dominic tucked him into bed with care. 3 days later, Max embarked on his journey into a local kindergarten. Arya, meanwhile, was eager to acquaint herself with the city and its surroundings. Skylar and Dominic had both learned the art of homemaking and nurturing their families through trial and error, bereft of parental guidance. Arya, Dominic's mother, lived independently during that time and was greatly impressed by the domestic prowess Skylar demonstrated each time she visited. Her apartment bore the resemblance of an operating room, meticulously clean and organized. Arya would often marvel, "How do you manage to maintain such cleanliness while working and taking care of your family?" Skylar would receive Arya's compliments with a smile, recalling the teachings from her orphanage days. Her instructor's words still echoed, "Remember, there are only 2 paths ahead once you leave this place, the streets or prison. There's no third option unless you believe in magic. And since you're here, you should know that magic doesn't exist." However, Skylar believed in magic. Dominic was her magic, her miracle. Arya, who had embraced her as a daughter, was magic as well. Above all, her most precious magic was her son, Max. Despite this, Dominic often wondered why Skylar had never sought out her biological parents. Each time he broached the subject, she would shrug it off. Dominic wished she would consider it at least once. "I don't want to uncover what happened to them," she had confessed. "I fear the truth. What if they're alive? What if they abandon me? I don't know if I could bear that." As Dominic would eventually discover, Skylar had uncovered something about her past. Pulling up to their apartment building amidst a gust of wind, Dominic found Max excitedly sharing a story with his grandmother, who smiled indulgently. "Hello there, big man," Dominic greeted Max, scooping him up just in time. "You're going to help me with these bags. I've got all of Grandma's mega orders." Arya inspected the trunk and raised her eyebrows. "Surprise, surprise. There's hardly anything here. You're quite the exaggerator." Once inside their apartment, joy and laughter filled the space. Energetic as always, Max immediately pitched in, assisting his father in unloading the bags. While Arya began preparing dinner, Dominic and Max settled on the kitchen sofa. "How was your first day, champ?" Dominic inquired, Max's face lighting up as he recounted his day in detail, from the games to the stories and lunch, even sharing an encounter with a playground frog that Max wished to befriend. Dominic allowed Max to share his excitement, understanding the importance of letting his son express himself fully before asking any questions. Suddenly, Max paused his storytelling. "Dad, I didn't know my sister was in kindergarten. Can we invite her?" Dominic looked puzzled. "Your sister? What are you talking about, Max?" Max persisted, "My sister, Dad. Even the teachers were talking about it. They said things like, 'No, it can't be true.' They were sure that Lucy was my sister. I'll show you in the morning. You'll see." Dominic exchanged an amused and perplexed glance with his mother, who simply shrugged and smiled, assuming it was a child's play and nothing to be concerned about. The next morning, while Dominic conversed with Max's kindergarten teacher, Max dashed inside. Shortly after, he returned leading a little girl by the hand. Dominic's movement halted abruptly. The girl standing before him was the spitting image of Max, the only difference being her gender. Mrs. Collins, the teacher, observed Dominic closely, her expression a mix of curiosity and realization. "You must be baffled by all of this. I can hardly believe it's a mere coincidence," she commented, her tone carrying a sense of intrigue. Dominic was in a state of shock and confusion, struggling to make sense of the situation. "I'm utterly lost. I have no idea what's happening here. We've never lived in this city. Do you have any relatives here? Maybe someone related?" Mrs. Collins inquired. Dominic shook his head. Not really. My wife didn't have any known relatives, and I'm in touch with my own family, so I would have known. Who are her parents? I should probably meet them. There might be things I don't know. Sure. Lucy's mom and grandpa. What day is it today? Tuesday. Mrs. Collins replied. Then her mom will be here around 4 to pick her up. Thank you. After leaving the school, Dominic immediately called his mother to share the perplexing encounter. Her voice revealed concern. I have a bad feeling about this, Dominic. I'm as bewildered as you are. I hope you're not getting anxious. I'll talk to her mom and hopefully find some answers. A sense of unease gripped him as the clock approached 4. Outside the kindergarten, amidst the gathering parents, Dominic waited anxiously. It wasn't long before he heard the voice of Lucy calling for her mom. He turned to see a woman cradling Lucy in her arms, a woman who bore a striking resemblance to Skylar. Her youthfulness, the warm brown hair cascading gently around her shoulders, the eyes reminiscent of Skylar's, with an affectionate glint as she looked at Lucy, all of it left Dominic stunned. Petite, just like Skylar, and possessing a certain grace and softness that struck a chord in Dominic's memory. She spoke softly to Lucy, her voice soothing, a murmur that he couldn't quite discern from where he stood. But it hardly mattered. Her tone, her gaze, conveyed a depth of affection that was unmistakable. She loved this child, this mirror image of Max, with a devotion akin to his own for his son. Drawing closer, Dominic began to notice the familiar gestures, the way she brushed a wisp of hair from Lucy's face, her laughter that held echoes of Skylar's, the slight crinkling of her eyes at the corners as she smiled. An icy fear settled over him, his heart racing against his ribs. The sight felt surreal, like encountering a ghostly apparition conjured by his mind. Taking a trembling step forward, his legs seemed perilously weak, as if they might give way beneath him. Swallowing hard, his mouth parched, he managed to utter a single word, Skylar. The world seemed to tilt, his vision blurring at the edges, a wave of dizziness engulfing him. Was it possible? Could this truly be her, or perhaps someone else, bearing an uncanny resemblance? The shock was overwhelming, and darkness edged into his sight. A sharp cry from his son pierced through the encroaching darkness, jolting him back to awareness. It was a sound he knew all too well, Max's cry, a sound that had roused him countless times from slumber. It was a cry that tugged at his heartstrings, invoking his parental instincts. Struggling against the remnants of dizziness, Dominic fought to open his eyes. Max's tear-streaked face materialized before him. His small form trembled as he sobbed, his distress a powerful jolt that snapped Dominic back to the present. Summoning all his strength, Dominic propped himself up, resisting the disorienting pull of dizziness. "Hey, big man," he whispered gently, reaching out to wipe Max's tears away with the back of his hand. "It's okay. Don't cry. We're here now, together." Max sniffled, gazing up at his father with wide, worried eyes, seeking solace amidst the confusion and uncertainty. Managing a feeble smile, Dominic aimed to soothe his son's worry. "Just got a little dizzy, Max, too much sun, that's all," he explained lightly, trying to downplay the incident. He couldn't afford to burden Max further with his own concerns. He needed to maintain his strength for his son, even though the shock of what he had witnessed threatened to weaken his resolve. The woman's gaze was now fixed on Dominic, her eyes alternating between him and Max. Her expression mirrored his own confusion, a clear reflection of the bewilderment written across his face. The unmistakable likeness between her daughter and Max had caught her off guard just as it had astonished Dominic. It was evident that she was grappling with the same perplexity, attempting to unravel the uncanny connection between Max and her own child. Intently focused, her expression revealed the effort she was putting into comprehending this bewildering scenario. Regaining his composure, Dominic fumbled in his pocket, eventually retrieving a photograph. Handing it to the woman, he watched as she regarded it with curiosity. "This is my wife, Skylar," he said, his voice carrying a note of melancholy. The woman's gaze shot up to meet his, her face reflecting a mixture of bewilderment and surprise. "But how could you have this? I lost that picture 6 years ago." "And that's me in the photo," she uttered in confusion. A wave of bewilderment washed over Dominic as he struggled to keep pace with the rapidly unfolding events. Retrieving his phone, he unlocked it to reveal the screensaver, a cherished family photo of himself, Skylar, and baby Max. The woman scrutinized the image on Dominic's phone, her eyes traversing its details. Recognition slowly spread across her features as she seemed to register the features of the family before her. It was as if she was gazing into a mirror, glimpsing her own smile in the image. An unsettling sensation began to creep over her, raising goosebumps on her skin. Mrs. Collins also directed her attention to the phone, her eyes locking onto the woman in the photo. As Arya glimpsed the woman's face in the photo, she couldn't suppress her gasp of astonishment. Her hand instinctively flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with surprise. The woman standing before them bore an uncanny resemblance to Skylar. It was like encountering a spectral figure. The resemblance was so uncanny that it couldn't be denied or dismissed. "I'm Ellie," the woman finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "I think we need to talk to my father." Without the need for words, Dominic nodded his agreement. Climbing into his car, a thick blanket of silence enveloped them. Throughout the ride, not a single word was exchanged. Their minds swirled in a tempest of thoughts, questions, and shocking revelations. Each of them was trapped in their own world of confusion, trying to piece together the enigmatic puzzle that was unraveling before them. In stark contrast, Brian and Lucy were a bubble of enthusiasm in the back seat, blissfully ignorant of the tension that hung in the air. Their innocent laughter and playful chatter provided a welcome diversion from the heavy thoughts plaguing Dominic and Ellie. They swapped stories with fervor, each trying to impress the other, occasionally casting curious glances towards the front seat. The gravity of the situation hadn't dawned on them. All they knew was that they had found a new friend in each other and were eager to spend as much time together as possible. Arriving at a house nestled within a tranquil suburban neighborhood, Dominic's unease was somewhat alleviated by the inviting warmth exuding from the dwelling. Taking Max by the hand, Lucy led him into a room, sharing her trove of toys and games with infectious excitement. Their giggles echoed through the hallways, offering a brief respite from the heavy atmosphere. Left alone in the living room, Dominic grappled with his thoughts. The ticking of the wall clock seemed to grow louder, intensifying the palpable tension. His gaze shifted to the family photos adorning the walls, each one deepening the unsettling resemblance between Ellie and Skylar. His heart raced in anticipation of Ellie's father's arrival, hopeful that he might shed light on their perplexing circumstances. The wait felt agonizing. As Ellie returned with glasses of water, she also brought a photo album filled with snapshots from her childhood. Thanking her for the water, Dominic started flipping through the photos. He was struck by how closely Ellie resembled Skylar, from the dark, curly hair to the sparkling eyes and heartwarming smile. Each image seemed to be a different iteration of his late wife at various stages of her life. The uncanny resemblance deepened his confusion, amplifying the sense of disarray that had plagued him since that morning. Ellie observed as Dominic perused the photos, his expression evolving through curiosity, confusion, acceptance, and then back to confusion. She sensed his internal struggle to make sense of the situation, an urge to provide comfort warring with her own tumultuous emotions. Ellie found herself grappling with a range of emotions. Within Dominic, a heart-rending sorrow and echoing ache reverberated, reminiscent of Skylar's absence, a yearning for his wife and the life they once shared. A painful void lingered in his heart, an emptiness that had persisted since Skylar's passing. However, interwoven with the sadness was a surreal sensation. Here sat Dia, Ellie, bearing an uncanny resemblance to someone from his past. It was as if she had stepped out of his memories and into the present. Despite being fully aware that Ellie wasn't Skylar, her presence stirred emotions he believed he had buried deep within. As he grappled with this tumultuous mix of feelings, Dominic's attention was drawn to approaching footsteps. The moment had arrived to meet Ellie's father, to unveil the enigma that had turned his life upside down within hours. An elderly man, in his 70s, entered the room. His gaze landed on Ellie and Dominic engrossed in the old photographs, a puzzled expression crossing his weathered features. Ellie promptly recounted the strange encounter to her father, explaining the striking resemblance between herself and Dominic's late wife and the unexpected encounter at the kindergarten. As her narrative unfolded, Mr. Kelly's countenance shifted. He sank into a chair, rubbing his forehead with trembling hands, wiping away beads of sweat that had gathered. With Ellie's story concluded, the room descended into an expectant hush. The only sound was the steady ticking of the wall clock, each second seemingly pregnant with anticipation. At last, Mr. Kelly, taking a deep breath as if bracing himself, broke the silence. It was a preparatory inhalation, the kind taken before embarking on a deep and potentially treacherous tale. Mr. Kelly straightened in his chair. Though age had bestowed a touch of melancholy wisdom upon him, he turned his gaze towards Dominic and Ellie, embarking on a narrative that had remained concealed for decades. It was apparent that delving into his past was an enormous undertaking for the elderly man. His voice quivered as he began by extending an apology to his daughter for the secrets he had harbored. However, when Ellie gently conveyed Skylar's demise to him, Mr. Kelly's composure crumbled. He inhaled sharply, his face losing its composure. In the next instant, tears streamed down his face as he began to cry, his shoulders shaking under the weight of his emotions. His sobs reverberated throughout his frame, his body racked by the tumult of his emotions. Covering his face with his hands, tears trickled through the gaps between his fingers and fell silently onto his lap. For all these years, Mr. Kelly had never imagined finding himself in a situation where he'd be forced to unearth this deeply buried secret. The bewildering puzzle that defined Ellie's life was on the brink of being irrevocably altered. As Mr. Kelly proceeded with his tale, a startling revelation emerged: he wasn't Ellie's biological father. He had encountered her mother a year after the birth of the supposed twins. Yet, her mother had never mentioned the existence of twins to him. She had claimed to have only one child. The room was enveloped in stunned silence as the weight of this disconcerting truth settled in. Ellie's expression reflected stunned disbelief. Her gaze darted between Dominic and Mr. Kelly as she attempted to reconcile the story she was hearing with the reality she had known all her life. Meanwhile, Dominic's mind was abuzz, attempting to comprehend the far-reaching implications of this revelation and fitting together the disjointed pieces of the puzzle. All Gavin Kelly knew was that Ellie's mother had led a modest life. Fate brought them together at a time when he longed for a family, and she was in dire need of support. Theirs was a simple story, two lonely individuals finding solace in each other's company amidst life's challenges and deciding to face the world as a united front. Gavin had embraced Ellie as his own from the moment he laid eyes on her, a small bundle in her mother's arms. Little did he realize the hidden complexities lurking beneath the surface of their life together. His first marriage had ended in divorce due to his inability to father children. When he met Chloe, a single mother with a baby girl named Ellie, he believed he had been granted a second chance at creating a family. Together, Chloe and Gavin wove a loving narrative for Ellie, shielding her from the harsh realities of their beginnings and ensuring she carried no burdens of uncertainty. Unbeknownst to Gavin, Chloe had given birth to twins and chose to put one up for adoption due to her fear of being unable to provide for both infants. Skylar was thus separated from her twin sister and birth mother, destined to be adopted by another family. This agonizing decision was made with a heavy heart, a choice Chloe found unthinkable and heart-wrenching. Chloe's life was fulfilled in many ways, but one burden weighed heavily on her soul. Guilt over her past actions tainted her happiness and potentially contributed to her later illness. A few years before her passing, Chloe embarked on a mission to find Skylar, the daughter she had relinquished, clutching a photo of Ellie in her hand. Her month-long journey was driven by a desire to locate the child she had left behind. However, Chloe understood the challenges that a reunion would bring. She didn't expect Skylar to accept her as a mother. After all, Skylar had grown up in a vastly different environment, ignorant of their shared family history, private jokes, and familiar traits. Their sibling-like affection was palpable to anyone who observed them. Ellie became a frequent presence in Dominic's household, hungrily absorbing every anecdote and memory they shared about her late twin sister, Skylar. Through these stories, she sought to piece together a part of herself that had been absent throughout her life, a missing link finally rediscovered. These shared narratives helped her construct an image of the woman her sister had been. Gradually, Dominic's sentiments toward Ellie transformed. Initially, he couldn't help but seek glimpses of Skylar within her, a bittersweet reminder of his lost love. Yet, as time passed, he began to see Ellie as an individual distinct from her twin. Ellie's unique traits emerged, dissolving the initial shadow of Skylar that Dominic had perceived. Their differences in tastes, mannerisms, laughter, and outlook on life became increasingly evident. Eventually, Dominic and Ellie felt the need for solitude, asking their parents to care for Max and Lucy. They ventured out together for movies or dinners, savoring each other's company and embracing one another as singular beings. Gavin, Ellie's stepfather, eagerly volunteered to pick up Lucy from kindergarten, cherishing the moments spent with Arya, Max's grandmother. The bond between the two families deepened as time went on. Max and Lucy's shared connection acted as a catalyst, gradually weaving the two families into a seamless whole. 1 year after this serendipitous reunion, Dominic and Ellie made a heartfelt decision to solidify their relationship, holding a simple yet meaningful wedding. Despite the unconventional path that had led them to each other, they found love and companionship in their shared journey. Together, they forged a new family founded on understanding, acceptance, and a profound reverence for the remarkable circumstances that united them. Life continued its steady rhythm. Dominic, Ellie, Max, and Lucy, alongside Gavin and Arya, merged into a united family. Their connection transcended mere bloodlines, woven together by a rich tapestry of shared history and emotions. And with this, my tale draws to a close. I hope it has stirred your emotions, sparked your curiosity, or left you in awe. If you've enjoyed my stories, kindly express your support by liking this video and subscribing to my channel. If you wish to share your thoughts or offer any insights on this story, please feel free to comment below. I value your feedback and relish the opportunity to learn from you. Thank you for your time and loyalty. Until we meet again.